Good evening, patriots and liberals. This is Spencer with the MCGA channel on YouTube. Today, there was a particular lie that stood out to me in the House of Commons, albeit you are well accustomed, and I am well accustomed to hearing only lies in the House of Commons. It really does seem as if that building's only purpose is to disseminate misinformation and lies to Canadians. Nonetheless, there were two people today tasked with pretending like we don't have an immigration problem in Canada, Gary Adesangari and Lena Metledge Diab, which is going to be important here shortly. Nonetheless, two Conservative MPs, of which are very respected, brought up the fact that there are 5 million visas expiring or expired in 2025, and that we have absolutely no plan to deport these people. Regardless of how you feel about migrants into Canada, if your visa is expired, it's time to leave. Goodbye. Thanks for coming. Nonetheless, we had Gary Adesangari and Lena Metledge Diab today defended. Now, what was crazy to me, what stood out to me the most, is how they blatantly backtracked and lied in the face of Canadians from their own statements. Mark Miller, when put into a committee on this last year, was pressed and acknowledged the fact that there are, in fact, 5 million people who will have expired visas in 2025. Nonetheless, these people believe that you don't pay attention enough, and frankly, they might be correct. Don't pay attention enough, though, that you'll be able to catch them on these lies. Nonetheless, I do, and I have, and I will prove it to you here today. But before we get into that, real quick, I just want to make everyone well aware of who these two morons are. Firstly, Lena Metledge Diab is connected to her family's owning of slumlord apartments on the East Coast. She's been embroiled since 2015 in a series of scandals regarding exactly that. It is alleged that her families, who own many places out east, are absolute slumlords and do not take care of their buildings. So that's who we've got running our immigration right now. A slumlord, that's great. Not as bad as Gary Adesangari, who has so many scandals, I have to read them. He was the Minister of Public Services during the Phoenix Pay System scandal, which is still happening, a $2.2 billion Liberal scandal. He as well, for some reason, was the Minister of Crown Relations for Indigenous people. Wrong Indian. Anyway, he was the Minister for Indigenous Relations and misappropriated $2 billion of a reconciliation budget. Again, what are we reconciling? I didn't do nothing. You didn't do nothing. But I digress. $20 billion later, nothing's changed. He was and is the public safety minister, of which he oversaw the misappropriation of $1.5 billion. Because if you've looked around, the public's not very safe, are they? Nonetheless, that's Gary Adesangari, who, by the way, is commenting on immigration and somehow is a federal minister who was not born in Canada. So we've got someone not born in this country lecturing Canadians about essentially being born in this country. The absolute farcical nature of Canadian politics constantly on display, especially whenever a Liberal opens their mouth. It is contradiction after contradiction, and it's almost as if we're in the Twilight Zone. But unfortunately, we're not. We're in Canada. And with that being said, enjoy.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals invited millions of migrants into Canada, knowing full well they didn't have the economic and social infrastructure to support them. Now Canada has a massive housing crisis, endless healthcare wait times, and countless Canadian youth without jobs. Newcomers themselves aren't to blame. It's the Liberals who misled everybody about Canada's capacity to absorb millions, especially under their government's economy-killing policies. Millions of people are now in Canada with expired or imminently expiring visas. How is the government going to ensure that they will leave?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my colleague for that great question. Today is a great day in the country. We introduced a very important bill that getting us to take steps to strengthen our immigration system and our integrity in the system while also upholding our humanitarian commitments. So as global migration patterns evolve due to conflicts and crises, Canadians expect a resilient and responsive immigration system, and that is exactly what we are doing.
Honourable member for Calgary Knowles Hill.
So just to reiterate, By the end of this year, nearly 5 million people will be in Canada with expired or expiring visas, and the government has no plan on how they're going to get them to leave. We have a housing crisis, a youth jobs crisis, healthcare wait time crisis. And knowing this, the Liberals have already issued nearly 177,000 new temporary foreign work permits this year, a 10% increase from the last quarter. That's the same amount of people as Kelowna. Well, with a youth unemployment crisis, why did the government increase the number of temporary work permits this year?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Mr. Speaker, we take our immigration system very seriously on this side of the aisle, as I know all Canadians do. And for that reason, we are strengthening the integrity of our system while maintaining the humanitarian ability that we have in this country. Make no mistake, Canada takes its obligations seriously, and we are strengthening our asylum system to make it more efficient and more flexible. And we will be doing exactly that.
The Honourable Member for Charles-de-Beauce-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Minister needs to understand that what we need to do now is fix the problems that the Liberals have been creating for 10 years. 6 months ago, we learned that 4.9 million people in Canada are on temporary visas, but we don't know how many have left the country or haven't left the country and should. So can the Minister tell us what the government's action plan is in order to ensure that people whose temporary visas have run out, how is he going to make sure that they leave Canada?
Minister of Public Safety.
Once again, thank you for the question.
Let me just at the outset say that the numbers that are cited are completely out of whack, and they're not. They're being miscited here. For the record, Mr. Speaker, we introduced the Safer Borders Act this morning. This is a very strong measures to ensure that our borders are safer. It's in order to combat organized crime, protect the integrity of our immigration system, equip law enforcement with the tools that they need, and yes, to strengthen our border. We will always be there to protect Canadians.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, your department tabled documents with Parliament that show that 4.9 million visas are going to expire between September 2024 and December 2025. How will we know how many of those actually wind up leaving?
As you noted, MP Kamich, that when people come here, in many of their visa documents, they undertake to leave. As part of the Levels plan, there will be some visas that are temporary in nature that will not be renewed, and those people, when they undertook to come here, will be expected to leave, and that is simply a fact. We'll have to monitor that carefully. There are many measures within our department to monitor these things, but it's one that, given the volume in question, it's something that we'll have to be very careful in supervising.
1 second, Mr. Coach, I stop the work. Let him finish. And you can ask. Would appreciate that. Okay, so I'll go to Minister. You have finished your remarks. Okay, Honourable Member Kamich, please.
Minister, I wasn't asking about whether they will leave or not. I'm asking you how will you ensure that a person whose visa has expired will leave? We know that just on study permits, there are 766,000 expiring by the end of December 2025. How will your department ensure that at the end of those study permit periods, those persons will leave?
Again, there are many ways that people leave the country, Tom. The vast majority leave voluntarily, and that's what's expected.
So explain those ways. How will you ensure it?
We work with our partners, including CBSA, to investigate, obviously, and prosecute those who violate immigration law. If someone refuses to leave, they're in violation of the law. And CBSA, after due process, has the legal obligation to remove people. Again, this isn't something that is taken lightly, but in the vast majority of cases, those people that have come here temporarily and do not have the right to stay, in fact, leave.
So then my next question will be, your plan calls for a cap on international students 485,000 2024, 437,000 2025. There's been adjustments to those. So obviously there's a discrepancy between the two. So how many do you project will leave the country then at the end of December 2025? All 766,000? What's the proportion? What are the forecasts the department has?
You'll have to be clear on that. A discrepancy between what and what?
Between the number of people who will be allowed into the country and then the number of people who will be on a study permit that's expiring. So those who are expiring the end of December 2025, how many of them will actually leave? Are you saying 100% will be expected to leave, or are you going to send CBSA to chase all 766,000?
You know that is not what happens. There are a number of things that occur. Some people actually get renewals. Some people get postgraduate work permits and stay a longer period. And we do work with CBSA to monitor these things. And when Statistics Canada reports on these, they take into account a whole variety of factors in estimating how many people are here and how many people have left.
So at the end of this year, 2024, how many international students do you expect to leave, and how many have left so far when their study permits expired?
How many have left as
so far?
Of November today? We don't
or
have
October
that number.
1st. Can you provide those to the committee?
I don't know. We could look into it.
Minister, how can you not know? It's in the immigration levels plan. There's a bunch of charts on page 22 starting about temporary resident immigration to Canada, persons who are in the country. It's in the immigration levels plan. It's in there. So how can you not know what that number would be? There's an order paper question, these government documents that were signed by your parliamentary secretary that were tabled with Parliament that has the numbers. So there's supposed to be expiring study permits in December, 84,642. And then in November, 36,130. In October, 10,182. In the month before, 127,348. So how many of those people are still in the country? How many have received the renewal? And how many of them have CBSA now looking at them?
What I can provide to you as a number is the expected decrease over that period over the 3-year period, which is about 450 the first year, 450 the next year. That's net, incoming and outcoming, with a slight increase in 2027.
So again, so how are you going to track then those whose work permits are expiring by the end of 2025? Again, it's in the hundreds of thousands. You're not giving me much confidence, or Canadians confidence, that you have a plan, because we have a breakdown by month how many student visas and work visas are expiring, and you haven't provided any information on the means. How are you going to do it? You say you have partner organizations, you're working with people. What are you actually doing? What's the process? How are you going to ensure people abide by the visa conditions?
As I said to you before, just like the vast majority of people that come to the country, on a temporary basis, the vast majority leave. In some cases, increasingly many, I will concede, people decide to choose. They are in a situation of irregularity in that case. Once they have exhausted their remedies, they are removed by CBSA.
So that's interesting, because you've made public statements repeatedly claiming and saying and alleging, based on IRCC data, that is not what's going on. And that's why the IRB now has a record number of backlogged applications for asylum. And you have said that tens of thousands of them are actually international students who are staying longer to applying for asylum, and you're claiming they don't have a legitimate claim to make. That those are your quotes, the headlines you're generating by doing communications out there. So are you saying you don't have a plan, that this is part of your plan to have an increasing backlog at the IRB to deal with it?
Thank you. The time is up. But Minister, you please respond.
There are an increasing number of international students making asylum claims, I think with very little hope, given their conditions. They, whether you like it or not, are entitled to a form of due process in this country. I don't think you would purport to deny it to them.